It's a scary time right now for the Clippers with so much uncertainty here. You got to bring Kawhi back, but it's a wasted season in all likelihood. Unless he comes back and he's 100% right away for the playoffs, you might not make the playoffs.
No,
this sucks, man.
Little did we know that there would be news break on a Tuesday night. And it was big news because one of the superstars of the game, Kawhi Leonard, had an injury that kept him out of the playoffs. All of the details about his injury were rather murky. We, in fact, goofed about it a few weeks ago. And then it comes out that he had a partial tear of his ACL that required surgery and that he has already underwent surgery for the partially torn ACL, which is a very long recovery, Kevin. So we got a lot to sift through with this. When you saw that news come across, what was your first reaction?
If a ACL injury recovery is about 9 months, that would place his return about April 2022, which would be the start of the NBA playoffs. So if Kawhi re-signs with the Clippers or if he goes somewhere else, his return might not be until the start of the postseason. And if the Clippers do get Kawhi Leonard back, I would think on something either, a 1-1. Maybe he opts out of his player option for next season, then signs a 1+1. That way he could become a free agent again in 2022 if he wanted to, or opt in again. But if he were to do that, it's going to be a situation where the Clippers are going to have a full season without Kawhi Leonard. There's no guarantee they would even make the playoffs. They might be in the play-in. So, it's insane, the ripple effects here for the Clippers in the short term and the long term, because who knows what Kawhi's going to do? Who knows when he'll be back? And we know with him, Chris, he's going to be super, super conservative with his comeback. He very well might just miss the entire season, knowing his history with injuries.
Well, especially because he'll be 31 years old, right? 31 years old with a history of injuries. Yep. And I think maybe dependent upon, and I know this isn't the fun way to talk about this, but dependent upon how much of the bag gets secured, as they say, because Kawhi Leonard has a very interesting situation leading into this offseason. He can become a free agent if he declines his $36 million option. He can re-sign with the Clippers for 4 years for $175 million. Or he could also, as you mentioned, sign a 1-year deal, and then next year he would be eligible for a $246 million contract.
And that's because he's only been with the Clippers for 2 years, so they don't have his bird rights right now. One more season would give them his bird rights, which would allow them to sign him to a 5-year max contract, which is why the big differential in the finances there.
Yeah, and so if you are the Clippers and you look, 31, we're watching a 36-year-old at times be the best player in the NBA Finals. So it's not out of the realm of possibility that we get still top 5, top 10 player Kawhi. But we don't know. We don't know.
You don't know.
We don't know. And he has not been able to make it through. It was a tough go during the Toronto run, right? And then obviously it ended horribly in the very weird season. And we have to remember, Kev, so he was all the way injured in San Antonio. He took all kinds of games off when he was in Toronto. And then it was a rough go during the playoffs. Then he goes to the Clippers, takes a tons of rest, and has a monster break before they go play in the bubble, right? Which is not available in any other regular season. And then this year, obviously didn't make it all the way through. And so you're going on, not a great track record of the most recent 3-4 years of feeling like this is a guy that's going to be able to play. If I'm spending $246 million, I'm hopeful that a guy can play 70 games for me and be available for the playoffs.
You don't know what you're going to get from him moving forward. And for the Clippers, like, you have an opportunity to bring Kawhi Leonard back long-term. You bring Kawhi Leonard back long-term.
Yes.
Regardless of any questions, regardless of whether he goes to your doctors, regardless of whether he shows you his medical records, you're taking a chance on Kawhi Leonard. With that said, though, Chris, for the Clippers, you want to bring Kawhi back. You want to bring him back long-term. This will now be year 3 of the Kawhi Leonard, Paul George experiment. Year 1, the team was fraudulent. Year 2, they get hurt. Year 3, you have your best player out for possibly all of the regular season. You might not even make the postseason because now you get the Warriors that are going to be reloaded, the Lakers that are going to get better. There's a report earlier today from Shams Charania, I believe, that they're more willing to have 80 at the 5 and LeBron at the 4 more often, which could unlock a heck of a lot for that team on the offensive end of the floor. The Lakers are going to be better. Teams like the Nuggets, they'll get Jamal Murray back sooner than the Clippers would get Kawhi Leonard back. I mean, the Pelicans should get better. These younger teams, the Mavericks should get better. The Clippers still could be in the play-in conversation, just like the Lakers were this season. Mm-hmm. They might not even be for like a 7 or 8 seed for the play-in. So I don't know, Chris. It's a scary time right now for the Clippers with so much uncertainty here. You got to bring Kawhi back, but it's a wasted season in all likelihood. Unless he comes back and he's 100% right away for the playoffs, you might not make the playoffs.
No,
this sucks, man.
It's hard to believe if you pay him the contract. If he's on the books for $36 million next year, I mean, how? I mean, how are you putting together a roster that is going to be able to compete within a West, which, as you mentioned, and there's going to be other teams that didn't make it theoretically. Look, the Pelicans should be better than they were this year. There are teams that didn't make it that should also improve this year. And we talked about, during those playoffs, I remember mentioning to you, it's pretty incredible what they're doing, and they should be proud of what they're doing with Paul George as their best guy. But if you lined it up and you said, all right, that team is going to play 82 games, how many games are they winning? I mean, I said there would be an argument as to whether or not they would be a playoff team.
You're right.
That's with amazing Reggie Jackson.
Yeah, you said that at the time. Yep, yes, I remember that.
And so now, I mean, I guess you'll have Ibaka, right? But I mean, you probably losing Reggie Jackson.
The version of Serge Ibaka that you had towards the end of the season when he's hurt, not looking the same, that was not a great Serge Ibaka, right? So you got Ibaka, who's a free agent. You got Nicholas Batum, who is very important this season, who's a free agent. Reggie Jackson's a free agent. Ibaka with the player option, we'll see what happens with him. But it's not just with Kawhi Leonard here that there's uncertainty. It's with these other guys, Batum and Jackson specifically, who were very important contributors to this team. For the Clippers here, assuming you get Kawhi Leonard back, assuming you get him back, whether it's a 1-on-1, whether he just opts into the player option, whether he signs long-term with a 4-year max, regardless of whatever way you get Kawhi Leonard back, to me, you still need to build with championships in mind. And the guy that I'm going after in this scenario is still, I want Kawhi recruiting Kyle Lowry. I want to try to work out a sign and trade for somebody like him with Patrick Beverley and with Luke Kennard's salaries, which could work to get Lowry. That way you could set yourself up. If you had Lowry or somebody like Lowry and Paul George throughout the regular season, you can compete enough to at least get the play-in or maybe one of the top 6 slots. And if you do that, and then you get Kawhi Leonard back in April for the first round of the playoffs, man, like you'd be loaded with a fresh Kawhi Leonard, fully rehabbed, ready to go. That could be the formula. Like that could be the way it sets up. So is that opportunity even going to be there though to get a Lowry? There's not a lot of other options on the market. And that would also have to be a sign and trade, which brings up other complications. So I don't know what the options are, but you got to do everything possible to get somebody else who helps you win now. Because if you can get into the playoffs, who knows what can happen if you're getting Kawhi Leonard back then.